Now, floater fishing is one of my favourite forms of fishing when I've only got a couple of hours to go. So I'm down here today on a little tiny estate lake that's got a few fish in it. Nothing massive, but just a few fish in order to get a bite. So like I said, I'm down here for 2 or 3 hours and I just want to get the rods out and get a bite. Now, we've had a bit of a walk around here and using the Polaroids, I've seen a few fish just cruising around under the surface, just short of some pads out there. Now, it's too far for catapult range. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spot a bit of bait out there, see if I can get a few fish feeding. If I can, then I'm going to get the rod out and see if I can hook one for the cameras. Now, in an ideal world, we could get round the other side, but we were in catapult range of where the fish seem to be around that lily pad area there. But unfortunately, it's quite busy and there's about 4 or 5 other anglers on. So we're going to fish it from this side, which is a little bit further. So I'm probably looking at 50, 60 yards to the pads where I've seen most of the activity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to spot out a few mixers in order to get the fish feeding. Now, in this bucket, I've got loads of different dog mixers. It has to be mixer, it can't be complete food because some of the complete food sinks, but dog mixer doesn't sink. So I've got a whole different load of shapes and sizes. I've got some little flat ones here, I've got some bigger ones, I've got some more rounded ones and more cylindrical shapes. And what I've done, I've just glugged it up with a bit of mainline cell glug, just so it's got that bit of oil kicking off and creates a bit of a flat spot in case the wind kicks up. So it just creates a whole flat spot around it, but mainly it creates a bit of an appeal for the fish, a bit more flavour into the water that will hopefully attract the fish. So I'm going to put a few of these in the spot, get it out to them pads across there, see if I can get a few fish taken before I even think about putting the rod in. So let's get a couple of spots out. So the kit I've got for this setup is I've got a 12-foot commander rod. It's got a nice through action. It's quite a soft rod as well, which is great when you've got small hooks and light lines. And you can really get some proper fight out of the fish. The reel I'm using is a 6,000 reel. Now, it's a bite and fight type reel, which means it's got a free spool system. So I can click the free spool system on when I put the rod down if I need to turn around to catapult some bait out or spot some bait out or whatever else. And it just means that the rod's not going to get pulled in if I get a really aggressive take. So the line itself is quite a strong line. It's a 0.30 in diameter, but it's got quite a strong breaking strain really for its diameter. And I quite like it. It's the mimicry in the brown version. That's quite nice. I've got it going all the way through to a little surface float there. And then down I've got a 6-7 foot hook link. Now this is 8-pound line and quite a clear line with a fine diameter. I think it's 0.26 or 0.28, something like that. So it's really difficult for the fish to see. It doesn't cast much of a silhouette as the fish come up to have a look at the bait. And the hook is a size 10 on a really fine gauge wire. I keep looking out there now because I've got a few fish feeding. So I'm going to cast out in a minute. As soon as I get 2 or 3 together, really smashing it, that's when I'm going to put the rod out. Anyway, size 10 hook on a fine gauge wire with a knotless knot, and then a hair rigged little wafter bait. So I prefer a wafter rather than a pop-up because it's less buoyant. And I've cut it right down to a square shape to resemble the mixers that I'm putting in as free offerings. So with the colour of it, it's a cell wafter, so it looks the same sort of colour as the mixers that I'm putting in, and cut it down to that square sort of shape, and it fits rather nicely. And what I like to do as well is I like to trim it right down so it's critical. I mean, a lot of people talk about critically balanced pop-ups sitting on the bottom, but nobody really thinks too much about critically balanced floaters. So if you imagine fish is just coming up and sucking it a little bit, not taking it violently, just sucking at it, if it's only just floating, it's going to suck into the fish's mouth a lot easier than what it will do if it's quite buoyant. So when this actually goes out, because I'm fishing about 40 yards out of it, well, I've baited up about 40 yards out at the minute, so I won't be able to see the mixer at all, so I'm just relying on that float going. So as soon as that float moves, I'm going to strike. Obviously I'll see a little ripple round where I know the hook bait is, but realistically I'm watching the float. So there's still the odd fish feeding out there, so I'm going to put another spot of mixers out and hopefully get a bit of a competitive feeding situation going and try and catch one. Yep. Nope. The way you took that then, I just thought, that's the mixer that's gone. And as soon as the float twitched, it's into it, had it on for a second, sneaky little gits. Right, these fish are being very, very cagey at the minute. I can't quite get to the pads where I want to be because there's some matey there casting along the front of them from the other side. So I'm having to concentrate in open water just by this little island. And I don't think there's anywhere near as many fish down there as what there is across there. So I'm just having to wait for a few fish to come off the pads, come around this island and have a go. So I'm having to cast in sooner than what I normally would. You know, as soon as there's 2 or 3 fish half interested, I'm having to get the rod out to try and sneak one. I can't seem to get 6, 7, 8, 10 fish competing. When that happens, it's easy to get a bite. So I'm having to be a little bit cagey. So I'm just trying my best to get a bite at the minute. And I've got a few fish feeding, just taking the odd mixer here and there. And then I saw one come up right where I'm sure my hook bait was. And it took it a bit more violently, which is often the case. I don't know why they do it, but obviously he knew there was something not quite right with that bait, but he couldn't resist taking it. And as soon as I saw that swirl and the float just twitch a little bit, struck into it. It was on for a second and then it came off. So yeah, a bit gutted, but I'm going to get a bit more bait out there now. I've just sharpened the hook up just a tad. I don't think it had anything to do with how sharp the hook was, but I've just sharpened the hook up a tad because it might make the slightest bit of difference. But yeah, let's try again. One there now just taken right next to the float. I've just had 2 just come up either side of where I think my hook bait is and then just miss it. That's what I like about this floater fishing, it's all very exciting. God, they're being really cagey in here. I think for a small lake they get fished for quite a lot. I mean, it's a Tuesday today and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 6 of us on and somebody's just gone home, so yeah, it's quite busy. Never seen it this busy before, but then again, I don't really come down here very often. These fish are acting a little bit weird and very, very finicky. I can see quite a few just under the surface, just going under the mixers and drifting off. They obviously know I'm here and I'm fishing for them. And they're just picking the odd one up here and there. So it's difficult to know what to do, whether to just keep the mixers going out and get a few of them competing, or whether to stick the hook bait out and hopefully one will just pick it up as it cruises through and goes underneath. But it's well worth just persevering, keeping the bait going in, because things can just turn like that in fishing. And you could get a 10-minute spell where everything just feeds together. You get a group of 3 fish come from that way, a group of 3 or 4 come from that way, and they all start competing for the mixers. As soon as they start competing, they're very, very easy to catch. When they're just in 1s and 2s and they're not really having it, it's making life really difficult. Well, it's just coming up to midday now and there's a lot more fish appeared on the surface. And there's one there right next to my hook bait then. And there's a bird competing with it. So hopefully the warmer it gets in the next hour or 2, the more fish might pop up to the top, drift out of those pads and come across to where we're feeding them. It's just a case of getting a few feeding confidently. One's just come up and mouthed the hook bait like that and just spat it out, and it's so hard to hook a fish when it does that. You need them taking quickly. When they just do that ever so subtly and then move away slowly, it's very, very difficult to hook into them. And that goes for fishing on the bottom as well as fishing on the top, but it's especially accentuated when you're fishing with long hook links and no real heavy weights on there. So again, I just need a few competing, a few taking confidently in order to get that bite, but it just seems to be 1 there, 2 there, 1 across there, 2 across there. If I can get them all together in one tight area competing, then that's when I'll get the bite. But the problem is there's a bit of a wind keeps kicking up, not a big wind, but to start off with it was pushing the mixers this way. Then it started pushing the mixers towards me, and now it's pushing the mixers that way. So I've got a real spread of mixers around the swim, which is not really what I want. But I'll keep putting them out and see if I can get them on the mixers straight away when they first go in before they spread out. That could be my best chance of a bite. Oh. And that was one, just had a little look at the hook bait then. Right, I've just trimmed a bit more off the hook bait just to make it even that more critical. Just sitting on the surface just that much, because they are literally just coming up and the lips are barely coming above the water on some of the takes, and they're just slurping it from underneath. So it just needs to be very, very balanced on the surface. So if they do slurp at it, it goes down quite quickly. And one thing I've noticed is the line is starting to go under the surface a little bit, because the bait does sink down quite a lot before it slowly comes back up. The line's staying under, so just got a bit of Vaseline. I'm just putting that on the line just to help it float a little bit more, and hopefully that'll help the presentation, because I don't want a fish as it comes up to the bait just to nudge the line on the end of its nose and spook it. If most of it's on the surface, which it should be now, then it's less likely to spook the fish. So yeah, that's going under then coming back up again, so that's a little bit better. So let's get this out. I'll spot over the top of it. Oh, finally managed to hook into one. And it was basically, there was two carp competing with a goose for the bait, and luckily the carp beat it to it. It's been a pretty tough day really. You know, but it's a busy lake at the minute, small lake, and there's a few people on, so I can't get exactly where I want to get. So it's been hard work trying to get the fish into this area by feeding them consistently and then getting them to feed competitively enough to catch one. So luckily I've hooked one. I don't know how big it is yet because I haven't seen him, but we'll see in a second. Nice back kit for this sort of thing. Yeah, just got him. Oh, it's nice to finally get one in the net. Well, here we are. It's been hard work getting this little fella because they've been very, very finicky, but it's glad to actually get one. I'd say not the biggest fish in the world, but it's a good couple of hours fun, and it's very visual fishing, it's floaty fishing, so it can be great. You know, you don't need loads of gear, you just need one rod and potentially a spod rod if you be on catapult range. So it's a great time just to get out in an afternoon when it's warm like today and just catch a few fish off the top and have a bit of fun. So even though it's not the biggest, I'm very happy to finally catch one. Well, I've just changed over hook bait from what I was using previously. Previously I was using a little whittle down cell wafter, but on the last cast it was just starting to sink because it was critically balanced, so just taking a bit too much water on and started to sink. So that last cast was probably a bit of a waste of time. But I'd already decided in my own mind just to change the hook bait a little bit, probably put a different flavour out there, maybe a different colour. So I'd changed to a little pink salty squid. Again, it was a wafter. Again, it was cut right down to that square shape to resemble the bait that I'm fishing next to. Whether it made any difference, no idea. I mean, I'm sure most of what they're seeing out there is quite silhouetted, so I don't think the pink colour made that much difference, but a different flavour in the water might have. But anyway, it was good to get a take. And I've just had a few fish feeding right on top of me. There's one just gone under the float now. So there's still a few fish out there feeding. It's getting difficult with these ducks because these ducks are getting more and more confident now. They don't seem to be scared of the line like they were previously. But also the fish do seem a little bit more active when we first got down here. The day's warmed up a hell of a lot more, and I think it's brought more fish to the surface. And I think continually putting a bit of bait out into that area has certainly helped to bring the fish to us and out of those pads. So I'm just going to persevere a little bit and hopefully pick up another one in the next, I think I've got about half an hour left before we've got to go. So hopefully there'll be another fish, but we'll see. Well, it's nice to have a second one. Well, I haven't got it yet. It's nice to hook a second one, should I say. And Ben just told me we've got 10 minutes before we've got to get off and hit the road, so I think this one came just at the right time. It was just as this wind started to push through here, and literally it just pulled my float and hook bait through a pack of mixers that I put out a couple of minutes previous. And just as it did that, one picked it up and had it. I was a little bit worried in case the movement was going to look completely unnatural and spook the fish, but it didn't. So another one on a little pink bait. Nice way to end the session. Nice little hard fighting common. It'd be nice when it's a bit bigger.